Good morning
Good morning.
and welcome to the worship service of the Unitarian Universalist Church in Idaho Falls. My name is Arthur Cole, today's worship associate. On this frosty winter morning, we welcome you. We know you come here for different reasons: to find community, to seek your spiritual and personal truths, to question, to nurture your heart and your soul, to be nurtured, to explore new ideas, to find comfort, and perhaps to find answers to your bigger questions. We have some announcements this morning. One of them is that our annual meeting will be on January 26th after the service. And I think, Victoria, you have an announcement you want to make.
Next Saturday, January 18th, Cindy and I have sort of haphazardly planned a shower for Siren, who's going to come with Eder, and baby Eden, so we can admire the baby. She actually brought her, excuse me. So I will have the shower at my house, 2173 Calkins. I'm going to lay a notebook out on the table to see who is going to come. Cindy wants to have, it's at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Cindy wants to have a potato bar. But I had purposely put it at 1 o'clock so that people would have lunch and then they could come. And I'm going to try to make angel food cake that stays up and is edible. Please sign up for that, and I got to get that list out. Also, apparently baby Eden, that's her name, E-D-E-N, has everything she could possibly use, even diapers from WIC. So we're planning that if you would like to donate to her, that she and Eder really are struggling with finances, bring cash or a check, and then we'll put it in an envelope for Siren. And I don't have any games to play, but we have something else where we're going to talk and hopefully laugh. And if women come, they're more than welcome, with no horror stories allowed. It's going to all be cheerful and laughing. So if you have any questions, ask me, and I will put that sign up on the table.
And please note, if you have joys, concerns, or sorrows and milestones that affected your life in the recent past, please write them down on a little slip of paper that's at the entrance, and we'll read them later in the service. Now is a good time to silence your phones. Thank you. And let us rise and greet one another, paying special attention to those we haven't met before.
Faith, how are you this morning?
Okay, one thing I need to announce also is that we have a potluck after the service downstairs. So even if you didn't bring anything, please join us. Sit at the table and share the meal. I invite you now to find a comfortable position. Close your eyes for a moment and enter in the spirit of worship. As I ring the peace bowl 3 times, may we open to the wisdom of our own and other traditions, to the joys and sufferings we carry with us today, and to the sacred presence here among us and in the world around us. reflected in the order of service. Love
Is the spirit of this community, and service is law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
We will now light the flaming chalice, symbol of our faith, to illumine this day. We light this chalice to affirm that new light is ever waiting to break through, to enlighten our ways. That truth is ever waiting to break through, to illumine our minds. And that new love is ever waiting to break through, to warm our hearts. May we be open to this light and to the rich possibilities that it brings us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Our call to worship this morning is from the poem Tintern Abbey by William Wordsworth. And I have felt a presence that disturbs me with the joy of elevated thoughts, a sense sublime of something far more deeply interfused, whose dwelling is the light of the setting suns and the round ocean and the living air and the blue sky and in the mind of man. A motion and a spirit that impels all thinking things, all objects of all thought, and rolls through all things. Therefore am I still a lover of the meadows and the woods and mountains and of all that we behold from the green earth, of all the mighty world, of eye and ear, both what they half create and what perceive, well pleased to recognize in nature and in the language of the sense, the anchor of my purest thoughts, the nurse, the guide, the guardian of my heart, and soul of all my moral being. I invite you now to rise in body or spirit and join in singing our opening hymn number 42, Morning So Fair to See.
Morning so fair to see, night filled in mystery, glorious the earth and resplendent skies. Pilgrims we march along, singing our joyous song as through an earthly paradise. Tall are the verdant trees, deep are the flashing seas, glorious each wonder the seasons bring. Brighter is face surmise, shining in pilgrim eyes, from which our waking spirits spring. Age after age we rise, 'neath the eternal skies, into the light from the shadowed past. Still shall our pilgrim song, buoyant and brave and strong, resound while life and mountains last.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The tale I have today is a Cherokee tale. It is about the first fire. And you can find this story written down in a wonderful book entitled History, Myths, and Sacred Formulas of the Cherokees by James Mooney. A little bit about this. It appears to be when the spider, who is the heroine of the tale, was first named the Water Strider. However, the modern Cherokee language forums agree that the character's actual name is Dilstoli, or a derivation of that word, which means scissors or scissoring action, referring to the motion that this stocky spider is able to use to move across the water. There is an image of this spider, Phidippidus johnsoni, on the cover of your order of service. If you're not, real spiders, you don't have to look. But this is the red-backed jumping spider that is most likely the hero of the Cherokee legend, because it does live in the original Cherokee homeland, and the body features and colors described in various versions of the tale match this little spider. And there are also ancient bone etchings of the water strider. In the beginning, there was no fire, and the world was cold, until the thunderers, Anishim Untikwaski, who lived up in the Gululati, sent their lightning and put fire into the bottom of a hollow sycamore tree, which grew on an island. The animals knew it was there, because they could see the smoke coming out at the top, but they could not get to it on account of the water. So they held a council to decide what to do. Now, this was a long time ago. Every animal that could fly or swim was anxious to go after the fire. The raven offered, and because he was so large and strong, they thought he could surely do the work. So he was sent first. He flew high and far across the water and alighted onto the sycamore tree. But while he was wondering what to do next, the heat had scorched all his feathers black, and he was frightened. He came back without the fire. The little screech owl, Wahoo, volunteered to go and reached the place safely. But while he was looking down into the hollow tree, a blast of hot air came up and nearly burned out his eyes. He managed to fly home as best he could, but it was a long time before he could see again, and his eyes are red to this day. Then the hooting owl, Uhuku, and the horned owl, Tkili, they went, but by the time they got to the hollow tree, the fire was burning so fiercely that the smoke nearly blinded them, and the ashes carried up by the wind made white rings around their eyes. Speaking of fire, they had come home again without fire, but with all the rubbing they did about their eyes, they were never able to get rid of the white rings. Now, no more birds would venture. So the little Uksui snake, the black racer, said he would go through the water and bring back some fire. He swam across to the island and crawled through the grass to the tree and went in by a small hole at the bottom. The heat and the smoke, they were too much for him as well. And after dodging about blindly over the hot ashes until he was almost on fire himself, he managed by good luck to get out again at the same hole. But his body had been scorched black, and he has ever since had the habit of darting and doubling on his track as if trying to escape from close quarters. He came back without the fire. But the great black snake, Gulagi the climber, offered to go for fire. He too swam over to the island and climbed up the tree on the outside, as the black snake always does. But when he put his head down into the hole, the smoke choked him so that he fell into the burning stump. And before he could climb out again, he was as black as Uskuhi. Now, they held another council, for there was still no fire, and the world was cold, but the birds and snakes and the four-footed animals, they all had some excuse for not going. because, well, they were all afraid to venture near the burning sycamore, until at last Kananiskiamayehi, the water spider, said she would go. Now this is not a water spider that looks like a mosquito. This is the other one, with black, downy hair and red stripes on her body. She can run on top of the water or dive to the bottom, so there would be no trouble to get over to the island.
The question was, how could she possibly bring back fire? I will manage that, said the water spider. So she spun thread from her body and wove it into a tutsti bowl, which she fastened on her back. Then she crossed over to the island and through the grass to where the fire was still burning. She put one little coal of fire into her bowl and came back with it, and ever since we have had fire, and the water spider still keeps her tutsti bowl. We will now proceed to sharing the joys and concerns of the congregation.
We have quite a few joys and concerns. One is a joy that we have 2 new people attending today. Okay. 3. Oh, okay. All right. Phil and Christy and... Okay. Hi. Welcome. And Vic Allen has a joy. A long estranged member of our family has reappeared, and we've begun mending fences. That's good. And Judy has 1 joy and 2 concerns. I have a place to live. I have food and family. Some have lost everything. We need to help how we can. Catherine Giovanna has a joy. Gemma Clark has yet another paper accepted for publication. Wonderful. And Catrice has a joy. I got to spend time with my kids. Had a successful surgery. Wow. And loving that it's snowing and not melting. And Bill Cohn has a concern. After 2 years in Mesquite, Dennis Jorgensen is back on oxygen full time. And Victoria has a concern. The fires in California are devastating, and people have lost everything. Yeah, that's worth about 2 candles. Do we have so? Yeah. And I have one. My wife Annalise has been not well since her surgery in April. And to me, I just want to express the hope, although it's a concern, but it's also a hope that it will get better over time. Do we have some joys and concerns in the... Oh, there's one. Yeah, we got that one, yeah. None, okay. So we light one last candle to lift up these joys and concerns, as well as the ones that remain in the silence of our hearts.
Our reading this morning is from the book Reason and Reverence, Religious Humanism for the 21st Century by William R. Murray. In a fine book on secular humanism titled Humanism, Beliefs and Practices, British scholar Janine Fowler suggests that the word spirituality contains too much of the baggage of traditional religion for humanists. She therefore suggests we need a different word to describe what she understands to be the essence of the spiritual experience. Spiritual experience, as Fowler understands it, refers to those times when the material world slips into insignificance for a moment or two, and the self experiences something of the depths of life, the quality of experience. It involves a suspension of ordinary perception and language, and it is usually stimulated by experiences such as an aesthetic awareness of the beauty, the care of the others, or a sense of awe and wonder at nature. These are moments when our egos are transcended. We experience a heightened awareness, a sense of unity and absorption in the object or activity, and we lose our usual sense of time and space. She then suggests that these are the very characteristics that humanistic psychologist Abraham Maslow described in what he called peak experiences. Fowler recommends that humanists use this phrase instead of the word spirituality. I have two problems with her suggestion. For one thing, I think spirituality is more than peak experiences. Although that is certainly one part of what it is meant by spirituality, I do not limit it to the experience of self-transcendence. For another, I think it is important for humanists to give our own meaning to the words like spirituality, which I believe is a concept with many layers of meaning. One of my former students said that to her the word spirituality refers to love of the universe. As one who is filled with awe when I contemplate the beauty of the earth and the unimaginable vastness of the cosmos, I like that suggestion. To marvel at the beauty of a flower garden, the towering grandeur of an ancient oak tree, the majesty of mountain peaks, the remarkable instinctual behavior of birds and animals, the diversity of biological life, the literally millions of organisms from the submicroscopic to the mammoth, is part of what love of the universe entails. An offering to support the mission of this church will now be given and gratefully received. A common criticism leveled at religion by those who typically reduce the idea of religion to meaning belief in the supernatural is that it's all in your head. They argue that whatever you may find to be sacred or imbued with spiritual meaning is just an emotion or a product of your imagination or brain chemistry, and it has no objective reality. To this I say, perhaps this is so, but that doesn't diminish our own experience of spirituality, nor does it diminish its importance in our lives. As I often say, I believe humans have a natural inclination to spirituality, and to deny the expression of some form of spirituality in our lives is to give up an important and beautiful part of being fully human. And for Unitarian Universalists, we have long realized that believing in the supernatural is unnecessary for a meaningful spiritual life, though it is, of course, perfectly acceptable to do so. Many UUs have more traditional spiritual beliefs like our neighbors of other faiths, but many others reject anything beyond the natural world and the present reality, while still basking in the awe and wonder the cosmos presents. Our Unitarian Universalist tradition values the findings of science, and we are not afraid to reevaluate our religious beliefs in light of our expanding scientific understanding of the universe. And when it comes to what science is learning about spirituality, I think our faith can only benefit from new discoveries. Each time I read something about this subject, it only enhances my awe and wonder. And it makes me excited to think about what future research may reveal. Contrary to pre-scientific beliefs about the heart being our organ for thinking or even the worldly home of our immortal soul, our brain is the organ by which we process the sensory inputs of the world, record our thoughts, and formulate ideas. So it seems obvious and that neuroscience and psychology would be the primary scientific disciplines for studying a phenomenon like human spirituality. Through observations and experiments, we have learned a lot about the physical structure of the brain, such as which regions control certain bodily functions or are critical for speech or other aspects of being human. But there is still a great deal of mystery concerning the way consciousness works or how memories are stored in our network of neurons. The brain is incredibly complex. And even when a person suffers some kind of brain trauma, they can sometimes recover abilities that were lost, effectively retraining a different part of the brain to restore the function. We've also learned a lot about how we think and process feelings. And we have some understanding of the way factors like emotional trauma, abuse, and grief can develop into depression and other mental illnesses. Psychologists and psychiatrists have made great progress in treating various forms of mental illness with psychotherapy and medications, but unfortunately, curing many mental illnesses remains elusive. We still have much to learn about the brain, consciousness, and the mind. And if we consider the concept of the soul to be associated with some kind of neurological phenomenon, it is even more elusive and speculative. We can speak metaphorically about the human soul in a way that seems obvious, but we can't quite define what that means. And many people simply accept that we have a soul with no scientific evidence to justify their belief. That is probably okay for now, but being the curious creatures we are, we keep pushing the frontier of scientific exploration to eliminate the placeholders for concepts like the soul or even God. Remember, we used to think that we lived on a flat earth, in a relatively small universe with heaven above and hell below, and we used to think creation was static, with humans created ex nihilo in the image of God. Some people still cling to these beliefs, but they are demonstrably false by all sorts of scientific evidence. It makes some people uncomfortable when we fill in the gaps in our collective knowledge and old beliefs are seriously challenged. But this does not eliminate spirituality or religion. It merely enhances our ability to be spiritual and religious within an intellectually honest paradigm of the universe as it really is. So with the caveat of how much we should admit that what we don't really know, what can we say about the current state of the science of spirituality? There are several ways we could approach this question, but as I said, mostly they concern the scientific disciplines of neuroscience and psychology. However, there are contributions coming from other fields like quantum physics, mathematics, and philosophy that may prove to be fruitful. There is the idea, for example, from the study of complex natural and mathematical systems, that such systems can produce so-called emergent properties that can't be predicted by analyzing their underlying components. It might be that consciousness, or even what we think of as the soul, is an emergent property of our complex biological brains. It is an intriguing idea, and there are lots of others like this we could explore. But today, I want to focus on more concrete findings that science can offer us now about spirituality. So let me begin with a traditional psychological study that looked at the way spirituality impacts our mental health and how it correlates with the likelihood of developing depression in particular. Beginning in the late 1990s, the psychologist Dr. Kenneth Kendler and his colleagues at Virginia Commonwealth University began a study of thousands of participants in which they differentiated between spirituality and other aspects of religion that Kendler called personal conservatism, such as adherence to religious authority. Spirituality, as Kendler defined it, represented personal devotion. This was reflected in the study's questionnaires and categories such as frequency of private prayer and frequency of seeking spiritual comfort. And though the study population was largely of Judeo-Christian orientation, this distinction between religion and spirituality helped remove factors such as belief in an authoritarian God or the inerrancy of Scripture from the findings. Kendler was also a specialist in studying sets of twins to determine what factors could be inherited genetically versus those related to nurture or life experience. There were 4 major findings from the study that may or may not surprise you. First, it was revealed that people with a high level of spirituality are less likely to exhibit depressive symptoms. Second, a high level of spirituality appears to serve as a buffer against the negative psychological effects of stressful life events such as illness, divorce, or loss of a loved one. And here it is worth noting that personal devotion was the critical factor. Other religious factors, such as regular church attendance or adherence to church doctrine, did not seem to offer similar protective benefits. The third finding was that personal devotion decreased the lifetime risk for alcoholism and nicotine dependence. Spiritual people are less likely to suffer from addiction in general. The fourth finding, which was based on extensive twin studies, looked at the genetic inclination for spirituality. And the data revealed that a person's degree of spirituality is determined 29% by heredity and 71% by environment. As another psychologist, Dr. Lisa Miller, writes, while contemporary psychotherapy tended to characterize spirituality and religion as a crutch or defense, a set of comforting beliefs to lean on in hard times, Kendler's study suggested the possibility that there might be a genetic capacity within us for spiritual experience. After reading the results of Kendler's research in 1997, Miller dedicated the rest of her career to the psychology of spirituality and exploring a central idea. If spirituality is an innate capacity, then it has to develop. Her goal has been to learn how this development occurs, and she has been especially concerned with how this relates to depression and addiction in children and adolescents, which has been the primary focus of her clinical work. If you are interested in the details of her decades-long research, I recommend her book, The Awakened Brain, The New Science of Spirituality and Our Quest for an Inspired Life. But let me summarize her important findings. First, in collaboration with researchers at Columbia and Yale, her team used MRI scans and other methods to confirm the idea that our brains are hardwired for spiritual experiences. Miller calls this our neurodocking station for spirituality. And due to the neuroplasticity of the brain, we can develop our spiritual depth and resilience with practice over time. Our neural networks and connections actually undergo a physical change. Other researchers have further strengthened these results, looking at the way the brain responds to deep prayer and meditation. And there is a remarkable change in the areas of the brain that are activated and deactivated. It is not surprising, for example, to learn that at the peak moment of meditation, the parts of the brain associated with our sense of individual differentiation become deactivated. This opens us to a stronger feeling of unity with the universe. These changes are especially pronounced in individuals who have maintained a daily meditation practice for many years, and the results are identical regardless of religious beliefs. The experience of transcendent spiritual emotion seems to be universal. Miller also confirmed that we have a genetic capacity that accounts for roughly a third of our spiritual inclination, with roughly 2/3 coming from our environment, especially from our family and culture. Community is extremely important for developing our spirituality, and the most important aspect seems to be nurturing our compassion and our capacity for loving others. One of the practical exercises Miller suggests for tapping into what she calls our awakened brain in times when we are struggling is to do some act of compassion for another person, however small. Just the intentional act seems to have mental health benefits. Though she began her research to see how we can better fend off and cope with depression, her findings have led her to conclude that the benefits of developing our innate spirituality are much greater. It can help us better discern our choices and make better decisions, even becoming more creative, ethical, and collaborative. A stronger spirituality can also help us integrate the dark moments of life into something good. Loss, uncertainty, and even trauma are the gateways by which we are invited to move beyond merely coping with hardship to transcend into a life of renewal, healing, joy, and fulfillment. The work of Miller and her colleagues is a new field of inquiry that has only been taken seriously over the last 2 decades. So it will be exciting to see what future discoveries may reveal. Other research related to the science of spirituality concerns the mechanism by which our brains produce mystical or transcendent experiences. It is well known, for instance, that people who experience a seizure in the limbic system in the temporal lobes of the brain can experience a variety of hallucinations and unusual sensations, and sometimes a patient will describe it in spiritual terms. It is not surprising that epilepsy has long been associated with prophets and other individuals who are believed to have a connection to the supernatural for good or for evil. Studies suggest it is possible that what we experience in a vision or a moment of transcendent emotions is the result of an unusual activation of the nerves in the limbic region. A good case in point was featured in a 2009 interview on the program All Things Considered on NPR. A Jewish man who had had a tumor removed from his temporal lobe recounted seeing swirling colors on the ceiling of his hospital room after the surgery, and they morphed into the Virgin Mary. He found this very confusing and amusing given his Jewish faith, and he did not think it was a real supernatural vision, but the experience did leave him with a stronger feeling of compassion for others. Incidentally, he has since become a Buddhist and is on the fence about whether the surgery was responsible for his experience or whether it was truly mystical in origin. He said that it didn't matter either way, and he felt grateful for the gift of compassion. The idea that a neurological or a biochemical effect may produce a greater feeling of compassion is very interesting. And if this turns out to be true, I can think of a few people who could use a medical intervention to help increase their capacity for compassion. There's also renewed interest in psychedelic drugs such as peyote and psilocybin mushrooms, since They are known for their ability to induce visions and other mystical experiences. They are also being studied for their potential use as medications for depression and other mental illnesses. Though the use of psychedelics is common spiritual practice in some cultures, such as among the Navajo, there's much debate about whether a spiritual experience can actually be induced chemically, or if this is something similar but different. Since we can only measure brain activity with instruments and must rely on an individual's experience related to us in their own words, it is impossible for science to answer this question definitively. The last aspect of the science of spirituality I want to mention this morning is the question of whether our prayers for someone else may be beneficial to them. The mind-body connection is accepted as real and important by modern medicine, so it is easy to accept that prayer and meditation can be beneficial for an individual, even if it is only practiced with the goal of reducing stress or blood pressure. But is there any scientific evidence that praying for someone else actually works? Other older studies from the 1980s done in hospitals seem to validate this idea, but current research has identified many errors in these studies, and most scientists now say there is no evidence that prayer for another person actually works. However, there are a few rigorous studies on couples that seem to indicate that there is some kind of connection between individuals who are emotionally close, and proponents have suggested that something akin to quantum entanglement may be involved. Skeptics say this is not how quantum entanglement works, especially on a scale much larger than the subatomic world. Perhaps someone will discover a mechanism that would allow our thoughts and prayers to radiate to others, but this seems unlikely with what we know. There are plenty of people, of course, who still believe strongly in the power of prayer, and it is mostly harmless unless it is used as a substitute for proven medical intervention. People claim miraculous healing due to prayer all the time. But it is tragic when we hear about someone losing their life from something easily treatable due to failed efforts at spiritual healing. In the world today, science can't prove or disprove the existence of spiritual concepts like the soul or God, nor can it say whether an afterlife or reincarnation is true, but it can say something about how and why we experience spirituality. No matter where we find ourselves on the spiritual journey, there are fascinating scientific discoveries about our experience of the sacred that can enhance our sense of awe and wonder in the face of mystery. As science continues to push the boundaries and fill in the gaps, there will likely be wonderful discoveries ahead. I invite you now to rise in body or spirit once again and join in singing our closing hymn, number 34, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire.
Though I may speak with bravest fire, and have the gift to all inspire, and have not love, my words are vain, as sounding brass and hopeless gain. Though I may give all I possess, and striving soul my love profess, but not be given by spirits long to be made whole. Let inward love guide every deed. By this we worship and are freed.
Our closing words of the poem A Common Destiny by David H. Eaton. All living substance, all substance of energy and being and purpose are united and share the same destiny. All people, those we love and those we know not of, are united and share the same destiny. Birth to death, this unity we share with the sun, earth, our brothers and sisters, strangers, flowers of the field, snowflakes, volcanoes, and moonbeams. Birth, life, death, unknown, known, unknown. Our destiny from unknown to unknown. I pray that we will know the awe and not fall into the pit of intellectual arrogance in attempting to explain it away. The mystery can be our substance. May we have the faith to accept this wonderful mystery and build upon its everlasting truth.
Please join me in reading the words for the extinguishing of our chalice flame. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.